Hello, my good people, and welcome back to another episode of In the Pocket. Today we're going to be looking at Obsolete. So Obsolete was recorded, I believe, in 2005. It's on the MUTEMATH debut album. It's a very interesting track. I remember starting to mess with the idea of Stare at the Sun in early rehearsals with the guys. And that's when we put up the bass drum, the marching drum on the X stand so I could play that, because there was like this 808 sound that they got from the Slingerland kit that I would play live. And it was a really cool song. And somehow, somewhere, while recording that song, coming out of the outro of Stare at the Sun, or not really the outro, just the end of it. I don't think there was an outro. Something developed. I don't know if it was Paul or Darren developed a track, and they made this whole thing that just kind of let it ride. And I remember getting to the studio one day, and it needed some bass. And I had my upright. I'm not even sure why I had my upright. I wasn't even playing it with the band. And we started putting this bass line over this track. Before I started playing, I just remember hearing immediately this line and kind of going right into it. And I kind of took inspiration from a classic jazz standard called Footprints that goes like this. So in the reset video of In the Pocket, I talk a lot about a motif with the 1, 5, and the 8. This is similar, but it's going up to the minor third, right? So you have the 1, 5, 8, and then to the minor third. By the way, I am tuned 1 half step down. So this is F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp. Okay, the song was recorded in C sharp minor. So when I remember tuning down my bass because I wanted that open string. So I had that option just to let that low D ring, in this case a C sharp. So for those of you that want to play along, you're going to have to tune down a half step. So back to the creation, I remember being in the studio and this line just kind of came out of nowhere. And it was a very ominous, kind of strange night. I remember, I think there's footage of it where Darren started filming as we were recording, as I was relaying down this bass line. We looked out the window of the studio and there was just a swarm of bats, just like in the air, creating this tunnel, this havoc. I don't know what they were doing. It just fit perfectly with the vibe of the song and everything that was going on and what we were capturing at the moment. We were so excited. And it was just one of my favorite experiences ever in the studio. I treasure it, and I'm glad that this song has been a staple of the MUTEMATH diet, if you will. Every time we would play, we play this one quite a bit. So a real joy for me to be a part of that process, that creative process. So I'll show a little bit on the upright, and then I'll move to the electric as well. It's basically an open D, and then from the octave D on the G string on the 7th fret, you kind of slide up right into going into that minor third. You do hit the 9th right before you hit the 3rd. So then you have this next figure where it adds like a rhythmic value to it. We have E, F, B, C, which then becomes very clear that we're not just in regular minor, we're actually in a Dorian minor because we're playing that raised 6. So you have that, right? Okay, so the way I'm viewing the song is to play it in D Dorian minor. Even though the song is actually in C sharp minor, I just want to clarify because I'm thinking on the bass and I'm using this kind of idea, right? The D Dorian scale is D, E, F, G, A, B, C. All right. You could also look at the scale from the perspective of C major, but you're just putting the tonal center around D, but it's the same notes as C major. So having that raised 6 in there really gave it a different touch, especially the next lick where it kind of walks down. Right, so I play around with this idea: C, B, A, G. Sometimes I go to the minor third, the low minor third, F, D. So I realize a lot of you may not play upright and want to learn it and play it on an electric bass, a fretted electric bass, which is totally fine. There's many gigs where I had to do that because I couldn't fly with an upright, or I couldn't take a fretless as well, especially just for one song. It was just kind of a bit much when we were flying all over the world. So I had to adapt this bass line to just a regular bass. And it was a little tricky getting the right feel. Obviously, I'm doing things a little bit differently because I'm interpreting it from the upright, which is a completely different instrument to me. I approach the upright using a lot of different technique as opposed to the electric bass. But there were certain things that just I had to do, like open strings that I wouldn't normally play. I wouldn't normally play up here on the bass. I would play up here, you know, for this. Also, to clarify, I'm tuned down a half step, which I think is good because you want to play along with the recording. There's really, I mean, there's some times where I didn't have time to tune down and I would play all the notes without the open strings. And I much rather play this with open strings because you just have that ringing, right? All right, so D to a high D on the 7th fret, up to the E and F, and you slide into it, right? And then you have this little figure where you're going E, F, B, C. I like to, when I would play this live on the fretted bass, I like to do as many slides as possible, kind of to emulate some of the uprightness of it all. And it was a little tricky, but I try to kind of slide into things and make it a little slinky. All right, so the next main little riff that's in it starts at the C, then goes to a B, A, G, and sometimes I play an F to pulling off to a D, right? Or sometimes, kind of with the same motif, sliding into the F to open D. Now, one example that I would not normally play, but I do it this way because I'm interpreting it from the upright bass line, is an open G. I wouldn't do, I rarely play the open G. I would usually do something like, I just like the sound of the bass further up on the neck and on the lower strings than up here than open. Now for upright, it's a lot harder to do that. So using open strings for me on upright is more advantageous. On electric bass, I choose not to use open strings often. And then the other big part of the song is kind of with like the little B section. So you have the guitar taking really the lead at this point, and it has some chord changes that you outline, but you still have this motif up top. You're just changing the bottom as the chords go. So for example, D, and then I'm going to the C chord right there, and to kind of outline that, I'm going to a G, F, E, C right before it. Then the same motif, back to that C, and then open A. Open A. Usually a slide down from the 12 on the A. So this song's a lot of fun to play. It's at 91 BPM in 6/8 if you want to put it into your DAW and play along maybe with the track and record yourself. I encourage my students to record themselves and listen back to see what they're doing. Thanks again for watching this video. Please like it if you found something useful in it, and please leave a comment. I love to interact with everyone who's watching this channel. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. It really helps me out a lot. Also, if you're interested in getting a bass course from me, I'm going to start to develop some material, and I would like to know who's really interested in learning more about my methodology and going to a more in-depth focus on some of my techniques and theory and ideas on how to create bass lines and different exercises you can use to become a better bass player. And this is for beginners all the way to advanced. So yeah, go to my website and sign up for my email. There'll be a link below in the description to get more information about that. Thanks again.